That took like 5 minutes longer than it should have. Okay. Real quick, Megan, you want to come up? I cut her off before she got to say her last thing, which is kombucha, which I want to talk about really briefly before I bring up Ben.
It was just a quick question I had earlier about kombucha. I wanted to know how many people make kombucha. Okay, and how many would be interested in a kombucha contest late spring? Okay.
First, second, third.
Great, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so we're very excited to have Ben Love with us here this evening. If you don't know Ben, he is currently the brewmaster at Gigantic Brewing. Formerly was the first employee and first brewmaster at Hub, at Hopworks. Really made his name in the scene, and also was a brewer, I believe, at Pelican, out at the coast. And Ben's just a great guy. They have been a big supporter of the club over the years and gave us a bunch of swag for the holiday party. So without further ado, I don't think he can hear or see us. Alex is going to grab him. Stretch, Phil. If you didn't have it, they made a porter with Jolly Pumpkin, which is one of my favorite breweries out of Michigan. Sorry, not a porter. It was a Thai Kolsch. Oh, you could just talk about it. It was spectacular. I was trying to fill, because I'm not sure you heard me. All right. Hello.
Yeah, so I'm Ben Love from Gigantic Brewing Company, just down here in Southeast Portland. Yeah. Give you guys, let me pull up I got some notes here, so I don't go off track too far. Yeah, so I've been brewing for about 14 years. Started out at Pelican down on the coast, down there for 3 years, and then I was at Hopworks and brewed there for 4 years, and then we started Gigantic coming up on about 6 years ago. So let's see. So thanks to Alex and Jim for inviting me out here to come talk. Thank you guys all for having me. So they asked me to talk about recipe formulation, and I realized that's something that there's a lot of different ways this talk could go. So I'm going to do the talk the way I would do it, obviously. So just bear with me. I realized that as I was thinking about it, I was like, man, there's a lot of different. Yeah. Anyways, so for me, we do a lot of different beers at Gigantic. When we started out, we only did IPA year-round. Everything else we did was seasonal limited release. We were always changing our beers up all the time. At this point, we do IPA and Kolsch year-round, our Kolsch-tastic, everything else. We did Ginormous as like a very specific beer for about a year and a half, and now we're changing it up all the time with different hops, changing the malt a little bit. But for me, when it comes to coming up with a new beer, obviously it starts with the inspiration. So typically, I'll go to get inspired to make a beer. Then I'm looking at previous beers that we made. A lot of times it's some new beer that I've tried, at a bar, at an event, something like that. Something that really got me going, and I'll drink it and I'll think, man, I really like that. But I think if I was going to make it, I would do this thing quite, a little bit differently. When we get new hops, that's definitely a big thing right now. There's always new hops that are coming out. New malts that we get. I know that there's a new malting company called Skagit Valley Malting, and we've gotten some malts from them that are pretty interesting and kind of looking at the possibility. One of them in particular is very fruity, and I'm interested to see kind of what we might be able to get from that malt in a beer. Different fruits that we have, different other drinks, pretty wide range of other drinks, including a lot of times cocktails are a big inspiration for us. We've done a few cocktail beers. We've done Pipe Wrench, the gin barrel aged IPA. We've done a whiskey sour beer. We just did a kind of a cocktail beer that was with hibiscus and tangerine and bourbon barrel aged. Different foods. And then a lot of times, we were even asked to brew a beer that basically go look at the art at the Portland Art Museum and get inspired to brew a beer from that. So I remember, we used like alder smoked malt and huckleberries and basically, we're trying to brew a beer that the bear in the painting, what we thought that bear would eat. That was a lot of fun. So when it comes to, you get inspired to brew a new beer. So how do I decide how I'm going to formulate that beer? So a lot of times, it's going to come off of beers that we've already made. So, we'll look at an existing recipe and think about, the flavors, the aromas, the texture, everything that has to do with that beer, and just basically come up with how we would make a modification into an existing recipe. We also, honestly, like a lot of times, if it's a beer style that I haven't made before, then I'll look at books that I have, like very specific about a recipe book, which actually I bought when I was homebrewing early on. I'll even go on the internet, I'll put in, robust porter homebrew recipes, and I'll look up and we'll see what comes up. And then you basically, we have a lot of experience. I've been brewing for a long time, so I can use that as a guide. And I can imagine what those flavors, what those different malts, what the hops, what the yeast are going to taste like in our beer, and then modify it. But sometimes, a lot of times if it's a really new style, then it can be hard to decide. It's going to be hard to know where you should go with that in order to make that beer sometimes. And then a lot of times it comes down to talking to friends who brew that style of beer really well. So I can tell you, we've recently been doing a lot of Brett Saisons. It's a program we got going a couple of years ago. And so I talked to my friends that make fantastic Brett Saisons and just ask them what they did. It definitely helps. It seems to help a lot if you have some concept of where you're going to begin with, rather than just asking them for the entire, walk me through it from beginning to end. Yeah, one of the biggest things, I think, is trying to decide if you're adding some type of a new or weird ingredient, how do you figure out how that's going to work, And that, new, it could be something really simple as a different variety of hops. It could be fruit, or it could be something really weird, like we added gummy bears to a beer one year. And so trying to find the right rate of gummy bear to put into that beer. Which I think we did a fantastic job. I think most people thought it was hops, but it was actually, Haribo gummy bears too. That's actually, if I could say anything about recipe formulation, it's like have excellent ingredients. Don't just, pick the cheapest stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the nice gummy bears. There are, Haribo, and then, I don't know. I don't think my wife's here yet, but there's another brand of gummy bear that she's been buying. They're delicious. What's that? Albanese. Yes, totally. Yeah. Albanese, they're fantastic. So.
They all have first beer.
Oh, good.
There are.
There's like a left and a right. That's okay.
All right. That didn't.
It's okay.
Well, you pulled them up.
So the beer that's going around is our Kolschtastic, and we had left and right in the cooler. It wasn't so much. I wanted you guys to all taste them, the left and the right, whatever. Anyways,
I think they all have the right.
Oh, they all have the right. Okay, and then we can send the left out. So the basically, one of the beers is all malt. So it's a blend of two different Pilsner malts and Carafoam and a little bit of acidulated to adjust for pH. And then, we use mountain hops in this beer and the Kolsch yeast strain from Imperial Yeast. And so that's one of them. And then the other one is essentially the same beer. It just has 8% wheat. So it's something that, as we've been brewing this beer for a couple of years, and talking to other brewers that make this style of beer, they're like, you should really try wheat in this beer. And so we decided to give it a shot. And so the beers are 3 weeks apart in packaging. It's as close as we can get. And so that's the difference. And it's really just comes down to, we did it. We did the taste test at our brewery 2 nights ago and decided which one we liked best.
I can see the ABV is off by 0.2%. You know which is...
Oh, you know what? That's just the label.
One of them is...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This one so far is.
Let me tell you guys about business of brewing. So, yeah. Well, it wasn't that we ran out of labels. It's that I ordered, we're trying to order enough labels in order to keep the labels cheap. So you order a lot in a run. And then we started selling beer in Texas a little over a year ago. It's going really great. And Texas is actually a lot of fun to hang out. I know a lot of people were like, you can't sell beer in Texas. But Texas is a pretty cool spot. But in Texas, you have beer and you have ale. And so beer is like below 5% alcohol and ale is above 5% alcohol. And you have to have a license in order to sell each one. The license is like a couple $1,000s. And so, yeah, I mean, Kolsch, when we first came out with it, it was 5%. And they're like, well, that's a different beer because we had a license for the other one. And so we made it 5.2. And voila, it's all the same beer. Because they also, they allow a 0.3% variation. So we changed the number on the label. Yeah, recipe formulation. Yeah, fantastic. Texas. So when it comes to adding new ingredients, I know my personal philosophy is that if I'm going to put something in a beer, then I want to taste it, I want to smell it, I want to experience it in some way. I don't want to just say that. A great example, we brewed a collaboration beer, and we had the brewer coming out to visit us, and he really wanted to put grasshoppers in the beer. And I was like, if you can tell me what those do, I will put them in. But you have to tell me what it does. I don't just want to do it because everybody will be like, ooh, you put grasshoppers in your beer. Yeah. Maybe I'll add protein in a hazy IPA. I don't know. So how do you try new ingredients? So obviously, you taste them. And malt is a fantastic example. I know that, the first beer we ever made at Gigantic, we were brewing it was the first batch, and so you never know how it's going to go, and so it was kind of a test, and we were looking through the recipe book, or not the recipe, but we were looking through the malt book for Brewer Supply Group, one of our suppliers, and they had Patagonia malt, and we were just like, it'd be so ridiculous and funny to brew with Patagonia malt. What a douchey name, basically. Because they're Malt Texco is actually the name of the company. They're from Chile. But they were just like, everybody in North America will love it. It's called Patagonia malt. So we bought that and we brought it in. And it was this crystal malt. It's like 30, 40 crystal. And it was fantastic. Yeah, and all their malts are amazing. So we continue to brew with them. Yeah. Totally. But it just goes to show that, anytime I go to the Craft Brewers Conference or any event where we have the opportunity, malt suppliers send us malts. I'm sure here at, Steinbart, so you can go through and you can take a little pinch and taste things. It's fantastic. It's great to be able to just chew on those and get a feel for what you're going to get in your finished beer. So, try your ingredients, try your malts. That's a great example. Another one is doing cold and hot tea for hops. So if you have a new hop that you've never used before, a good way to try it out is to just take a couple pellets and make a cold tea and make a hot tea, and then you can smell it, you can taste it, and you get slightly different character than you would in one or the other. Yes.
Cold tea, like dry hopping, like
cold tea, like just taking like cold water.
in a few days to let it do its
No, like within a few, like half an hour, like pretty quickly. Yeah, just making that cold tea and smelling it and tasting it. I mean, the taste is going to be pretty intense, but you get a sense of it. And when you do the hot tea, you get a different vibe off it. I mean, definitely like
It's like coffee, cold brew,
hot brew. Yeah, and when we do selections, when we go to Yakima and decide which hops we're going to buy, we do a rub. So that's another thing to do, is just to put it between your hands and give it a good rub to heat it up those oils and smell them. But But then you can also do, the cold tea, hot tea technique is good. Another one that I really like is, you got gummy bears, hops, hop oil, whatever. Go buy a 40 of Pabst. And because you know exactly what it smells like and tastes like, and it's really cheap, and it's pretty neutral. And so you can take those ingredients and put it into a 40 of Pabst and let it sit cold. The twist top, it goes right back on. You can put it in the fridge if you want to, and it'll give you a good idea of what you're going to get in that finished beer. Or if you know that you're going into a golden ale or whatever beer style, hop, an IPA or something like that, you could, like with the gummy bears, then I added those into water at a certain quantity, which I knew based on weight to water ratio, and then dosed that into an existing beer that we already had to get an idea of what the aroma and flavor was going to be like. So when it came time to brew the new beer, then we didn't put too much or too little in.
Do you do test baskets, like small?
We don't. No. That's why we have all these other fantastic techniques for testing things out. Because our smallest batch is 15 barrels. So we just do it. I've been brewing for 15 years. Van, my partner, he's been brewing for over 20. Scott, our head brewer, has been brewing for 17 years. So we got a lot of experience when it comes to like the, like I was telling Nolan and I was talking about before, like we all learned how to brew the like very like two style beers, and which is great because then once you know how to do that, then you can go beyond that a lot easier. But to not mess up something that's on a large scale, then we've developed all these techniques to sample it on a much smaller scale. Another thing that we do is we try out new hop varieties in pins, so in cask pins, so 5.4 gallons, and we do pins every Friday at Gigantic. So if you guys love cask beer, then come on down and try it. And usually we're trying out some new hop. Typically, it's a great way to do it. We usually do it with IPA. Oh, cool.
So is that a pin?
Yeah, that's a pin.
All right, 5.4 gallons.
Yeah, 5.4. Double that, 10.8 to Firkin. Like I think double that, it's like a Kiljacan or something. Like it just keeps on going up to ridiculous British standards.
English James is supposed to know these things.
Actually, that would be the greatest thing. Number one thing: change all of your brewing to metric, because it'll make all of this so much easier. Because this is maybe that doesn't work. But as far as weights to liquid measurements, it's fantastic. Yeah, just un-American. Let's see. When we do make changes, so for example, the Kolsch that I brought tonight, when we do make changes, we try to just change one thing. We don't like just go all in. Even if sometimes it's hard to hold back. You're like, no, I really want to make this and this. But we always try to like hold it to one thing, make it as thoughtful and scientific as possible. Definitely, we take notes of everything we do, so that we can go back. And a lot of times it's surprising how 3-4 years down the road, especially because we're brewing new beers all the time, that we'll come back and we want to brew a beer style that's very similar. And so it's great to be able to look at the notes from something we made before and have the notes complete, so that it makes this new beer so much easier to make. Okay, here's a couple unique techniques that we've picked up along the way, or different things that we've done. I guess I just got two, but one is what is called dip hopping. So Van and I, we traveled to Japan a couple years ago, and we toured the Spring Valley Brewery in Tokyo, which is the small brew pub craft end of Kirin Brewing. And so they have all of Kirin's technology, and Kirin does a lot of hop farming, and they do a lot of really cool things. And so what dip hopping is that for them, they like the the fruit notes that you got out of a lot of these new hops. I think Mosaic is a fantastic example of it. And they didn't like what we call the OG characteristics, so the onion and garlic, and the Gilroy. If you're from California. Yeah, the garlic growing capital of the world or something.
Ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Or I guess here it'd be like the North Plains, right? But so what we've been doing is it was one of those things like we're hanging out with them for a night and they told us about it, and so then we had to kind of like guess at at what they were doing in a way. Like they gave us a little bit, but then we have to be like, well, what if we did this? And they'd be like, yeah, you're pretty close at that, because they're not just going to straight up like tell us exactly what they're doing. So what we've been doing is the best example is about a year ago we made a collaboration with Wayfinder, and it was a Mosaic Pilsner basically. And so we took the Mosaic and we put it into our fermenter, and we added 150 degree water. And we added about 16 gallons for 11 pounds of hops, and then we hydrated the hops with that 150 degree water, and we let it sit for about an hour before cooling into the fermenter. And so the idea is that hot water that it basically kind of flashes off that OG characteristic, and what you're left with is mostly just that fruity characteristic and the aroma and flavor, and it's not hot enough to isomerize the hops. The pH isn't right or anything. And so all it does is kind of get rid of that. And then also, because of the time that we're adding it, you're also fermenting it, so you're further driving that off. Because we ferment on top of the hops. They're in there the entire time. So that was one. And then one of the most eye-opening kind of experiments that we did recently was with Fantastic Voyage, our first Brett beer that we've done, and we brewed 15 barrels of it, and when it came time to bottle condition that beer, then I was like, oh, this is a really good opportunity to try out a few different. Well, let me back up here. So we started out. We brewed this Brett beer. It was time to bottle condition it, and I was like, all right, what yeast do we want to use to bottle condition? So I asked a few people what they use, and there was one of the popular ones was RP15, which is it's from Scott Labs, and it's a rock pile wine yeast, and that was one that my buddy Gabe up at Anchorage Brewing, he uses that. It was Vinny down at Russian River that told him about using that, although apparently Vinny has moved on to some other yeast since then. So there was that one. Ron out of Jolly Pumpkin, he uses basically like the Trappist High Gravity yeast strain, which is the Safe Brew, the T58. So we brought that in. I really love white wines, so I actually came down here to Steinbart's and picked up the AW14, which was like it was basically the yeast strain for dry minerally white wines, which I really enjoy. So I was like, well, let's see if that works. I grabbed the Champagne yeast strain, and then also the Lallemand, the CBC1, which is I think they call it like the cask strain. Basically, it's a hardy fermenter. You can have a lot of alcohol in it. It's going to ferment, and then it's going to drop really bright, and it just sticks like glue to the bottom of the bottle. So I took those yeasts, I hydrated them up. They're all dried yeast, and then bottled off a case of each of these beers with the different yeast strain just to see if there would be a difference. And we waited a couple months, and then we did a taste at Gigantic, but then also with our friends down in the Commons, and it was actually shocking. Everybody was shocked at like how different the beer was, and we would all. I feel like everybody felt like all of them would be good beers. All of them were fine, but there were some that were more that just had more of the characteristics that we wanted out of a Brett Saison. So we ended up deciding to use the RP15 because it had a higher ester component. It had that higher Brett-derived aroma and flavor. It had a nice tartness. I know with the AW14, wine yeast, the like minerally white wine. At the time when we tasted it, it had a higher it was the only one with diacetyl. A little bit lower carbonation. Had, not surprisingly, white wine notes. The champagne yeast. I remember I really liked the champagne yeast, but it didn't bring out the Brett notes that you really wanted in a beer like that. It was crisper and drier. The T58, it was really nice, but I guess it was pretty shocking how distinct they were. So I guess the point of this being that when you're bottle conditioning a beer, try out a few different things. You know what I mean? See what works well. And I know that we're lucky that I have 15 barrels of beer, and so to do a case of beer is, that's a lot of beer. But it was something that was like really eye-opening and shocking for us, that everybody thought that the bottle conditioning yeast wasn't going to affect the finished beer as much as it really did. So
it's got to sit there and it's going to munch on whatever's left in there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and we do add sugar to it, but everybody assumed that because it was we only had a small amount of sugar that it's not going to affect it that much. But I know that that there's also all of the esters that the Brettanomyces fermentation, and the beer, the beginning beer, was 2 Brett strains and it was French and Belgian Saison strains, and so those are creating a lot of esters that are then going to be, munched up and tweaked by the finishing yeast, and so you're going to end up with a different product. So,
What did you get the RP?
It's from Scott Labs, which is we did, yeah. So I guess to finish, I don't know if you guys know this, but I need to catch up on it, but we put all of our recipes on our website. So if you guys are ever interested in what we do and any of the beers that we make, although I was looking at it today and it's been a couple years since we updated it, like I said, so I really need to we've been busy. I've been busy. So, but it's one of those things we need to get back on. But from the very beginning, we were putting, and I know we went to a new website hosting service a couple years ago, and a lot of them kind of got lost for some reason. But if you guys ever try a beer that we make, then send an email to us. I'll send you the recipe. I take our exact recipe and just scale it down to 1 barrel, like the exact thing. And I know that the biggest thing is that, like, our I always do percentages of malt, but then I always do exactly what we do for hops. And I know that our isomerization, all that, it's very different it seems to be very different from what a lot of homebrewers get, and so you have to modify that. But it's also different from system to system, and that's one of the reasons why we do it too. Is that I guess it's 2 reasons. One is that even if somebody brewed the exact same recipe at another professional brewery across town, that it's not going to turn out the same. There's one, and then 2 is that nobody's going to do that. I don't think so. Why would you do that? But it's good. I know that when we got started, we always, like I said, even today, if we're doing something new that we've never done before, then I'm going to go on the internet and I'm going to go search it and see what other people are doing and use that as a reference point. It's like any job. You need to do research. You got to figure out what you're doing, and the research comes in that form: drinking, talking to other brewers, everybody that's here, and just going from there. So if you guys ever have any questions, then just let me know. Yes.
What does that provide modern times with great notion ways in, or what does it mean to collaborate with another brewery?
Yeah, so he's asking, what it means to collaborate, and there's a couple things going on. I mean, the most business answer is that it's marketing. But a lot of times the collaboration, you'd be like, hey, I just started selling beer in Texas. How about I go brew a beer with my friend in Texas? So then people that drink their beer will have our beer at their brewery, and they'll be like, oh, I really like Gigantic. I think I'm going to go buy some Gigantic, or at least give it a try. So there's that one. But usually usually more than that, it comes down to when we do collaborations. Then if I'm going to somebody else's brewery, then typically like I'm the guy who's going to start the conversation. As far as like they might invite me, or I might say, "Hey, I'm going to be in your area. Do you want to make a beer together?" Usually it starts with some sort of friendship. We actually know each other. You know, we're actually hanging out together, and so it's like, "Hey, I'm going to come down. Let's make something. Let's make something together." And so if somebody's coming to see us, then I let them start the conversation of what style of beer it could be, and it starts out very like, you know,
It's like a date.
it's like any day. Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. Yeah. Thank you, Noel. Yeah. It starts out very much like so we're going to Hawaii in a couple weeks, and so like that collaboration started out. I was like, "Hey, I was at your brewery last year. They had just opened up this brewery called Aloha Brewing, and yeah, really good beer. Well, we go there every year. We sell beer there, so yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the business. But yeah, we went to Aloha, and I really enjoyed their beers, and so the guys who sell our beer in Hawaii, I was like, "Hey, do you know anybody at Aloha that can make an introduction?" And they made the introduction, and then with this one, actually, he hit me back with like 3 different styles that he was interested in, and I came back and I was like, all right, of those, like 2 of those sound interesting to me, and here's another one that you might consider, and then we kind of pretty quickly narrowed it down to something, to one specific style, and then I was like, okay, well, here's what I think that we should do with that, and then it kind of, we just like bat it back and forth until we come up to a final recipe. He came back with me basically like, the style that we decided on, which was one that he suggested, was a Belgian Golden, and I came back to him and I was like, well, this is what I would do for that recipe as far as like malt and hops and yeast and a lot of times with hops, especially, I was like these are the varieties that I would be interested in using, because you never know what people have, in this day and age, and it's not easy to just get whatever hop you want. Yeah, not since 2007. And so, and then he came back to me and he's like, "Hey, we have some great like local honey. Do you think that would be cool to use?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So that's how kind of these things come about. But then there's other times when you're very, you're a little bit more specific, or you're given kind of a task. So. Like we've done some beers with Japanese brewers, and so you're kind of tasked with. We got one coming up where it's like the idea is that we're like bringing Japanese and Oregon ingredients together, and so how are we going to do that? One of the things I always think is good about collaborations is a lot of times you're given some slack to try something new that might not necessarily work. Because a lot of times people will, like, again, the business end, people will buy a collaboration even if it's like not so hot, so you're given a little bit more leeway to try something new, and then there's also the other thing where maybe you're the collaborating brewer, and so you're like, "Hey, why don't we use this ingredient? It's really expensive," and another brewer says, "All right, yeah, okay, we could, that costs a lot, but we could do that because I know that we'll be able to sell it all like at our bar, so it's it's not going to be a problem. I know it's going to all sell, so it's not an issue." And they also use it as an opportunity to just be like, "Yeah, whatever, let's go for it." So, yeah.
Does that really play a role, like your consideration of are you going to bottle or distribute, or are you just going to be on site on tap?
Sometimes it depends. I mean, that's the thing, like with collaboration, especially, like you, a lot of times you're just like, just throw it to the wind and do whatever we want to do, like make money, we lose money, whatever, it's something fun that we're doing. So, yeah.
So, you kind of talked about that you know your systems well enough, and that you know tastes and profiles well enough, that you just go straight for your full point. Can you talk about scaling?
Kind of, not exactly, because I haven't homebrewed in a really long time. So, I mean, as far as scaling for us, like we're always going from typically like a 15 barrel to, we're either doing a 15 barrel batch or a 45 barrel batch, and we have a 15 barrel system. So if we do a 45, we're brewing 3 times into that. I think the largest collaboration I've ever done is probably like a 60 hec, like a 55 barrel batch. And so in that case, I'm relying on that brewer to know their system in order to take the recipe that we're working on together and modify it for what they know that their brew house is going to do. And so it's not just talking about the pounds of ingredients, it's also talking about the aroma and flavor that we want in the finished product, and so that they need to know what is going to come out the other end as we're writing this recipe and building it out.
So the reason I asked the question is because you talked about using the cask
Oh yeah.
as sort of a way to figure out certain hop profiles.
Yeah.
So the implication is that you do go small volume in certain areas. So I'm kind of curious how you make a 5.4 gallon 2
dry hop.
15 barrel.
Yeah, so with the cask, it actually, that's one of the few areas where it seems like that does directly correlate, and so we're able to get a really good sense of that dry hop ratios seem to be pretty much the same, and even with the slight variation that exists, we know what it's going to do in the finished beer. So, yeah.
You guys do whole bags only, or are you scaling up?
Whole bags of hops?
No, sorry, on grains. Is it all
No.
55-pound bags?
No, well, yeah, no, not really.
Weighing out
Yeah.
really precise.
Yeah, so he's asking if we use whole bags only when we're doing beers. Not typically, no. Sometimes yes. It depends on the beer. Yeah, it depends on the beer. That was something that when I was at Pelican, Darren was like, no, this is what's the difference between 3% and 4%? It's a little tiny bit. It's not a whole lot, which is pretty true actually.
33% is the difference.
3%, 4%.
33% is the difference. 4% is 33% bigger than 3%. That's the inner dairy.
Thank you.
The inner dairy.
Yeah. A lot of times what we will do is since we're brewing 3 batches of a beer, then we'll find the way to if we have a good example is we're brewing a pale ale and it has 33 pounds for each batch, of crystal malt, let's say, C30 or something. And so then we'll just be like, oh, well, we can just, in the brew 1 and 2, we'll put it in a 55-pound bag and a little bit less pale malt. And then in brew 3, we put in more pale malt. And so then it works out, the right ratio. So a lot of times that's more, but no, we don't cut when it comes to that, typically. Except for in stout. Doesn't matter. No.
Which Kolsch had wheat?
What's that? Oh,
Which of the 2 Kolsch had the wheat?
well, I can't say. I don't actually know.
I'm guessing it was the first one.
I only have one cold.
Yeah, so for us, it was the one that was
Bigger body?
it was crisper and drier with the wheat.
With the wheat.
Mm-hmm.
I got a bigger body on the first one.
I can tell you that
And I assume that was
the one that was all malt had a little bit more sulfur, although it could be from the malt. It's probably from that particular fermentation. They both have sulfur. The one with the all malt just had a little more. The one with the wheat was a little bit. I tasted it as more refreshing in a way, a little bit drier, not quite as much body because there is a little bit less malt.
Yeah.
So, that's what we were going for. But actually, I mean, I couldn't say which one came out first or whichever. Yeah. So I'm not sure because he had them both. So I'm assuming maybe. Yeah.
I think everyone had them both. He was in second one.
Steady rotation at the brewery next.
Sorry.
Next steady rotation at the brewery. We now seem to have constant on tap.
Oh, like full-time tap? No, we don't do. We have IPA and Kolsch year round, and then everything else is changing all the time. Yeah, it's actually going back to the business thing again. it was interesting. People were always asking us to brew beers that we had made again, and so we had our 5th anniversary last May, and so we decided to do a year of greatest hits. Which we joked that it was like Eagles' greatest hits because like they came out with 2 or 3 albums, and they're like, we got greatest hits, and totally ridiculous. But what was interesting is that they sold pretty good, but they didn't sell as well as they do when we come out with something brand new that's like very, very much like designed for right now. And this industry, I've been in it for 14 years now, and I've been drinking since I grew up here in Portland. I grew up in Gresham. Yeah. Yeah, East Side. Yeah, and as a kid I drank. My friend's parents bought Deschutes, Black Butte Porter and Obsidian Stout, so I had that as a kid, and then Bridgeport IPA came out. I think like when I was 17 or 18 or 19, something like that. And and I drank from the Horse Brass from the time I was 21. So I've been part of this scene for 20 years, and the biggest thing is that it's just changing so quickly right now as far as the beers that people want. And so the biggest eye opener was this last summer we did Solid, or Hoppy American Wheat, and 3 years ago when we did it, it was it sold great, and it was still the same beer, and then it said Hoppy American Wheat, and this time when it came out again, same label. And what I kept hearing was that people were either like, well, or at least beer buyers, they'd say, people don't really want wheat beers right now. Or, I forget what the other end was, but what was funny is that if we would have put hazy pale on it, which is exactly what it was, because it was 30% wheat and 70% pale malt, which is, Simcoe hops, it was big and juicy, then it would have sold like crazy. So, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous.
Damn, no imagination.
No, well, and the hard thing is too, like these days, there's so many beers. Yeah, there's so many beers that you can buy, and people drink our beers, and then they're like, oh, this is great. I really like it. But it's that initial, it's like everybody who loves brown ale or mild ale or what, all these beers, ESBs or whatever. Although I feel like those are almost made a comeback, but but not exactly. But the people have them, then they really enjoy drinking them. But when they first hear the name, then they're just like, I don't want that.
What are your favorite beers? What are you going out of the way to drink?
God, I don't know.
How can we get on
That's a really bad question.
That's an excellent question. No,
That's a fantastic question. No.
Just doing interesting things in the local market. You should check out.
Who's your favorite local brewery? Out of the 210.
Yeah.
Gigantic Brewing Company, Southeast Portland.
What's funny is that I actually drink a lot of cocktails. So. Favorite cocktail? Oh, I can tell you that. Boulevardier. Yeah, bourbon Negroni. That's my way. Yeah, all the time. Yeah. No, actually, I'm a really big cocktail fan. I drink beer at work all the time. No, I mean, there's a lot of beers that I enjoy, but that's the thing. There's so many different beers that I enjoy, but I do drink a lot of cocktails, and I can tell you my biggest bitch about the local beer scene. It's that I walk into a beer bar and I can't just be like, hey, I really feel like, something like a Kolsch or a Pilsner or something like that, and there's none of it on tap.
Yeah.
You'd think if somebody had 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 taps, they'd at least have one.
Yeah. It used to be 50 guys at
Yeah.
What's the difference between Mosaic hops and Simcoe hops, or what's in your mind?
Yeah, so for me, Mosaic has a very berry quality to it, very fruity, like caneberry quality, and then also some tropical notes. It's definitely, it can definitely have that OG note, depending on when and how you use it. Yeah, the cat piss. I'm not as sensitive to that. I kind of like cat piss a bit. Other people complain about it. I'm like, it's good. Simcoe is more on the pineapple side a lot of times, and that so a little more brighter citrus, and it can also have the cat piss too.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it can be pretty cat pissy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not as OG, I find. And in all those hops go through different. They seem to go, crop years. They can be different, and it seems like right now Simcoe, at least Simcoe that we're getting, isn't very OG, but. Yeah, we're all Yakima Chief, and we also do selections. So, yeah, I mean, like Cascade hop isn't a Cascade hop. They aren't all the same. You can have, and same with Simcoe or any hop variety. That's why we do selections. We go up to Yakima every year, and they set a handful of Simcoe, Cascade, Crystal, Centennial from different farms in Oregon and Washington, and we rub those hops and decide which lot we want to buy, which farm we want to buy from. And it's blind-ish, sort of. I mean, we can kind of tell who it's coming from, but that doesn't really matter. It really matters that aroma and flavor, because you can get Cascade hops that are incredibly citrusy, and you can get ones that smell like tomato plants. I mean, you really can. It smell like tomato soup. And so there's a full range of aromas and flavors in hops.
Are you getting all that onion garlic thing right up front when you rub them, or do you get that later on when you? No,
yeah, it's in the finished beer.
Yeah, so that's kind of a pig in a poke.
Yeah. Although some people I know we don't go for this, but there's other brewers that when they rub them and it smells like burnt tires and diesel fuel, then they're like, this is what I want.
That's sulfur. That's sulfur.
Well, but they feel like that the finished product that they get is exactly what they want. So that's not what we go for, but there are other brewers, and I can tell you guys are all loving their beer. It's selling really well.
Yeah, I get a lot of OG and a lot of IPAs and Hortos, so I'm not buying those. But what do you do if you get those in the batch? What do you do to minimize that in the brew itself?
If it's there, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as late editions, early editions, etc., is it dry hopping?
Yeah, a lot of times. I mean, it comes out in both kettle and dry hop editions, but I feel like a lot of times it's more pronounced in dry hop editions. So it just comes down to getting the right ingredients to begin with to make sure that you don't have that in the finished beer. And also, sometimes it can also be the quantity that you add. So if you add a ton of mosaic to something, then you're definitely going to get it's more highly likely that you're going to get that OG character. Gilroy. And that it just seems like the more you add of certain varieties, it's more likely.
I seem to find it more in the bottles than I do on tap. The same beer on tap, a lot of times I don't find it in the bottles.
Huh.
I'll have it unless I have something the second day that kind of goes away.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Do you guys have a standard dry hop technique?
Standard by like the way that we dry hop, or okay, yeah. So the way that we dry hop, it's kind of the classic method, I guess, which is that after primary fermentation is complete, then we'll drop the yeast out and then dry hop through the top of the fermenter with pellets, and then we let it sit for 3 days. We've started largely bubbling CO2 through the bottom of the tank in order to drive those hops back up into solution, and so we'll do it 3 times a day for 60 seconds at a time over those 3 days. And we've noticed we've tried a few different techniques. There's a ton of different techniques. Some people just leave it, some people bubble through the bottom, some people recirculate it, and we find that we've gotten the best aroma and flavor by doing that bubbling technique. And then we crash the tank with the hops in there, and we leave them in until we find in the tank and then racked to the bright tank. And so they're in there the entire time.
How long is that then?
We'll crash for about 4 days. So, I mean, from the time we dry hop to the time that we rack it, it's, let's see, it's about, it's like 13 days. 13 days, yeah. No. Yeah, 13 days. So it's just like, because we're on a 21-day cycle, so that's from like brewing to brewing.
So they're in there a long time.
Yeah, quite a long time. Yeah.
Cold crash most of the time.
Yeah, we always cold crash. Yeah, but I mean, when we dry hop at fermentation temperature. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you said an interesting word in there. You said when we find. Are you talking? You know, there's lots of different fines, BioClear and gelatin. Is there something that you guys prefer?
The original one. The isinglass. We use isinglass. Yeah. We like it because it will drop multiple times. And so, you know, usually, I mean, we get a good, because it's sitting cold for a pretty long time before we rack it. But we usually get a really good bed. And we do tests with each of our beers to make sure that we're going to get a good compact bed to get the most beer out of that. But then anything that goes through into the bright tank, it's in the bright tank for 2 days before we package it. And so it's going to drop again in the bright. And then once we put it into the keg or the bottle, if there's anything left in there, it's going to drop again. Whereas with like Biofine, you know, some of these other substances, it's a one-time shot, basically. So
you pull down after it's in the bright before you package?
there's a standpipe in the bright tank. Yeah, it's just a little tiny bit of beer. It's a dish bottom.
Oh,
and
so just enough over.
Yeah, so it's just a little above. It ends up not
layer.
being very much beer, but it allows anything that's going to drop again. I mean, yeah, it's not vegan, but.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you for coming out. Thank you for bringing the beer. You guys are doing a great job, and we appreciate the support. So just quick reminder, if you have other questions, are you taking off, or are you going to be around for a couple minutes?
Yeah, hang on for a little bit.
All right, so if you have other questions, say hello, introduce yourself. Just quick reminder, second Thursday of March, I'm pretty sure, but look for the email at Ancestry in Tualatin is our March meeting, and thank you for coming out.
Yeah. Enjoy.
My wife got your beer.